I'm Nadia, 27 now, but I still remember the taste of cold gravy and leftover bones. Most people think childhood hunger is about empty stomachs, but they're wrong. It's about watching other kids eat while you wait for permission to even sit down. My mother remarried when I was 8, and her new husband Victor made sure I understood one thing from day one. I wasn't his blood, so I didn't deserve his food. The wedding cake was vanilla with buttercream roses. I got one thin slice, while Victor's kids, Liam and Sarah, got thick pieces with extra frosting. Victor smiled at me across the table, but his eyes were cold. "We're all family now," he said, cutting himself another slice. But when dinner came that first night, I learned what family really meant in his house. His children eat steaks. I got the fat scraps he carved off the edges. Mom laughed it off like it was some cute quirk. "We'll make it work, honey," she whispered to me later. But I saw the way Liam smirked while chewing his perfectly cooked meat. I saw how Sarah pushed vegetables around her plate, wasting food I would have devoured. That night, I went to bed with my stomach growling and my pride shattered. I was 8 years old, and I learned that love had conditions. "You're not free to keep," Victor would say, every time I reached for seconds, his favorite phrase. Like I was some stray animal he'd graciously allowed inside. Meanwhile, his son Liam barely lifted a finger around the house but got dessert every single night. Chocolate cake, ice cream, cookies, all the sweet things that made childhood bearable. I watched from the kitchen doorway while they laughed over their treats. When I complained to Mom, she'd stir her tea and avoid my eyes. "Victor works hard to feed this family," she'd whisper. "Just be grateful for what you have." But gratitude tastes bitter when you're chewing on gristle while everyone else enjoys tender meat. I learned to swallow my words along with the scraps. The worst part wasn't the hunger. It was the way they made me earn every bite. "If you want more, you work more," Victor would announce, handing me a plate of cold leftovers. I'd spend hours cleaning their rooms, doing their laundry, washing dishes until my hands turned red and raw. And still, I got the bones while they got the feast. I stopped asking for more after that. Instead, I started keeping mental notes. Every slight, every smirk, every time they made me feel less than human, I stored it all away like coins in a piggy bank. One day, I promised myself, I'd cash them all in. My 10th birthday will forever be burned into my memory. Victor decided to host a barbecue for the family, which apparently meant everyone except me. Liam and Sarah got thick, juicy burgers stacked high with cheese, lettuce, and tomatoes. Their friends came over and there was laughter echoing from the backyard while I sat inside watching through the window. When Victor finally called me outside, he handed me a paper plate with charred bones from the grill. Not even meat, just the bones he had already stripped clean for the others. "Happy birthday, kiddo," he said with that same cold smile. The other kids stared, but none of them said anything. They just kept eating their perfect burgers. Mom appeared with a cupcake, but even that was wrong. No frosting, no candles, just a plain muffin with a single birthday candle stuck crooked in the top. She whispered, "Happy birthday," like it was a secret she wasn't supposed to tell. I smiled anyway because what else could I do? But inside, something curdled and turned sour. That night, lying in bed still hungry, I made a promise to 10-year-old me. One day, Victor would beg me for crumbs. One day, he'd know what it felt like to watch others eat while his stomach twisted with emptiness. I held on to that promise like a lifeline. Just before you continue to watch, please subscribe to this channel and like this video. It would encourage and help us keep creating amazing content for you. All right, back to the story. School became my sanctuary, but not for the reasons you'd think. The cafeteria was where I learned to survive on scraps of a different kind. I'd trade half my lunch for stories from other kids, stories about normal families who ate dinner together without someone deciding who deserved what. I became an expert at making it look like I wasn't hungry. "Oh, I'm not that hungry today," I'd lie, sliding my sandwich toward a friend. But the truth is, I'd already eaten the apple and crackers during first period because my stomach was growling so loud I was embarrassed. By lunch, there wasn't much to share. My teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, started keeping granola bars in her desk. She'd slip me one after class pretending it was for helping clean the whiteboard. I think she knew. The way she looked at me sometimes, like she could see right through my smile to the empty space underneath, she knew. Those stories my classmates told, though, they fed me in ways food couldn't. I learned that normal dads didn't make their stepdaughters beg for dinner. Normal families didn't have hierarchies at the dinner table. And slowly I realized that words had more power than I'd ever imagined. If I couldn't fill my stomach, at least I could fill my mind. When I brought home my first report card with straight A's, I thought things might change. Maybe Victor would see that I was worth investing in. Maybe good grades would earn me a seat at the real table. I was so naive. Victor looked at my report card like it was garbage. "Brains don't feed you, hands do," he sneered, tossing it back at me. "You think you're so smart? Smart kids don't need handouts." But when his son Liam failed math that same semester, Victor bought him pizza as a pick-me-up. A whole large pizza just for Liam to help him feel better about school. I watched Liam eat slice after slice while complaining about how hard fractions were. Meanwhile, I was solving algebra problems in my head while scraping the last bits of food from my plate. The irony wasn't lost on me, even at 11. Intelligence, I learned, was only valued if it came from the right bloodline. That night, I held my report card in my room and made another promise. These grades are going to feed me someday. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday, knowledge would be my weapon when I finally fought back. Every A was proof that I was worth something, even if Victor couldn't see it. By 13, Victor escalated his control tactics. He installed a lock on the refrigerator, an actual padlock that clicked shut every night at 9. His excuse? "You'll lead us out of house and home if I don't watch you." This from a man whose son Liam regularly threw away half his dinner because he was too full to finish. I started hoarding crackers from school lunches under my bed, not because I planned to eat them right away, but because knowing they were there made the hunger pangs less terrifying. Every crunch in the middle of the night was a small victory against his system of control. The locked fridge became a symbol of everything wrong with that house. Only Liam and Sarah snuck sodas at midnight. Victor always forgot to lock the mini fridge in the basement where he kept the good stuff. I was rationing saltine crackers like they were gold coins. Mom pretended not to notice the lock. When I asked her about it, she'd change the subject or suddenly remember something urgent she needed to do in another room. I think the lock made her as uncomfortable as it made me, but she'd chosen her side long ago. Some nights I'd hear her crying softly in their bedroom, but by morning she'd be back to pretending everything was normal.
The silent dinner happened on a Tuesday in October. I remember because it was the day after Halloween, and Liam and Sarah's candy was spread across the kitchen counter like a sugary mountain I wasn't allowed to climb. Mom had tried something different that night. She'd served me first for once. The moment my plate touched the table, Victor's fork hit his plate so hard the whole table shook. The sound echoed through the dining room like a gunshot. "Blood first," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. The words hung in the air like a threat. Mom's face went white. Her hands trembled as she took my plate back and served Victor, then Liam, then Sarah. By the time she got back to me, there was barely anything left in the serving dishes. I pushed what little food remained toward the other kids without being asked. The silence that followed was heavier than hunger ever was. Nobody spoke for the rest of the meal. The only sounds were forks scraping plates and Liam's loud chewing. Sarah kept glancing between Mom and Victor like she was watching a tennis match. And me? I sat there memorizing every detail, because I knew this moment would matter later. Blood first. I'd show him what blood could really do. At 15, I got my first job washing dishes at Murphy's Diner downtown. The owner, Mrs. Murphy, was a round woman with flour-dusted hands and a heart bigger than her restaurant. She took one look at my skinny frame and immediately started, accidentally, making too much food during every shift I worked. "Oh, honey, this order got canceled," she'd lie, sliding a full plate of meatloaf and mashed potatoes toward me. Hate to waste it. Sometimes it was pie that was too damaged to serve. Other times it was soup that was from yesterday's batch, even though I'd watched her ladle it from a fresh pot. Those meals at the diner were like therapy. I didn't just eat, I savored every bite. I chewed slowly, tasting flavors I'd forgotten existed. Salt that wasn't rationed, butter that wasn't hidden, protein that wasn't scraped from someone else's leftovers. Mrs. Murphy would watch me eat with tears in her eyes, though she tried to hide them. For the first time in years, I felt full. Really, truly full. And with that fullness came a dangerous feeling. Hope. Maybe I could survive this. Maybe I could build something better. Every shift at the diner was proof that kindness existed, even if I couldn't find it at home. When I brought home my first paycheck, Victor was waiting at the kitchen table like a spider in his web. The check was for $87, more money than I'd ever held in my life. But before I could even process what it meant, Victor was reaching for it with that familiar smirk. "Don't think you're rich now," he laughed, examining the check like it was a joke. "You'll waste it all on stupid kid stuff. Better let me hold on to half for house expenses." House expenses? Like the lock on the fridge, like the food I wasn't allowed to eat. I'd learned to lie by then, though. "My boss only pays in cash," I said, folding the check and shoving it deep in my pocket. "This is just for taxes." Victor's eyes narrowed, but he couldn't prove I was lying. I opened a bank account the next day, walking 3 miles to a branch where none of them would ever think to look. That smirk of his made my stomach turn, but I smiled back anyway. Let him think he was winning. Every dollar I saved was another step toward freedom. Every lie was practice for the day I'd finally tell him the truth about who I really was. The college acceptance letter arrived on a Wednesday in March. I was the only one of us kids to even apply. Liam barely graduated high school, and Sarah was more interested in her Instagram followers than her grade point average. When the mailman handed me that thick envelope, my hands shook so hard I could barely open it. "Congratulations," it said. "You have been accepted into our business administration program with partial scholarship." Partial scholarship. It wasn't everything, but it was something. It was hope printed on official letterhead. Mom saw me reading and started tearing up. For a moment, I thought she might actually be proud. But then Victor snatched the letter from my hands, reading it with that same expression he got when the electric bill was too high. "Too expensive," he announced, crumpling the letter like trash. "Not happening. Maybe community college in a few years if you save up." His kids barely managed to graduate, but somehow there was always money for Liam's car payments and Sarah's shopping trips. I smoothed out the letter later, pressing it flat with my hands, and slid it into my secret folder. I'd find a way. I always did. All through high school, I saved every tip from the diner in a shoebox under my bed. Ones, fives, sometimes a lucky $10 bill from a generous customer. It all went into that box. I told everyone at school I was broke, so they wouldn't ask to borrow money or expect me to join expensive activities. By senior year, I'd saved enough for a full semester at community college. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Every crumpled bill represented hours of washing dishes, hours of being kind to customers even when I felt hollow inside, hours of building something Victor couldn't touch. When relatives asked what I planned to do after graduation, I'd shrug and mumble something about figuring it out. But when Victor asked, usually with that patronizing tone he used when he wanted to remind me how directionless I was, I'd smile and say, "Eat." He never understood the joke, but I did. I was going to eat, really eat. I was going to feast on opportunities he said I'd never have. I was going to consume success until I was drunk on it, and one day, he'd watch me do it. The night before I left for college, Victor locked the fridge one last time. I didn't care anymore. My bag was packed with everything I owned, which wasn't much, but hidden in my pillowcase was that shoebox full of tip money, my ticket to a different life. Mom hugged me tight at the door, whispering, "Don't forget us, okay?" But the truth was, I'd already forgotten. Every cruel word, every empty plate, every night I went to bed hungry, I was leaving it all behind like old clothes that didn't fit anymore. I slipped out before dawn, walking to the bus station with my single suitcase and backpack. The sun was just coming up, painting the sky pink and orange. Behind me, the house where I'd learned to survive on scraps grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. On the bus, I pressed my face to the window and watched the world change outside. Every mile was another step away from Victor's table and toward my own. For the first time in years, I wasn't hungry. I was starving, but for something entirely different. Walking into the college dining hall was like stepping into a dream. Endless trays of food stretched out before me, steam rising from chafing dishes like incense. Pizza, burgers, salad bars with more vegetables than I'd seen in months. And no locks, no permission needed, no one deciding who deserved what. My roommate, Jessica, watched me pile food onto my tray with concern. She asked me, "You okay?" when I started crying over a bowl of pasta. I couldn't explain that these were tears of relief, that for the first time in my life, I could take seconds without asking permission. That first night, I ate until I was sick. On purpose. I wanted to know what too full felt like after years of never enough. Jessica thought I was homesick, but really, I was celebrating. Every bite was freedom. Every second helping was revenge against every empty plate I'd ever been handed. I called in sick to my work-study job the next day because I couldn't stop eating. Cereal for breakfast, then more cereal. Sandwiches at lunch, then dessert, then more sandwiches. I was making up for lost time, lost meals, lost portions. I was done with scraps forever.
3 months into my first semester, Mom called. Her voice was different, smaller, shakier. "Honey," she whispered, "Victor lost his job. The kids won't work, and money's really tight. He wanted me to ask, could you maybe send something just to help with groceries?" I stared at my phone, processing the irony. The man who'd locked the refrigerator was asking me to fill it. The man who'd fed me bones while his children ate meat was begging for my help. I laughed so hard, Jessica peeked over from her desk, worried I was having a breakdown. "Maybe he can eat scraps," I said, and hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear this time, from power. For the first time in my life, I had something they needed, and they had nothing I wanted. Mom called back an hour later, crying. "Please, Nadia, we're really struggling." But I'd learned something important. Just because someone is family doesn't mean they deserve your help. Just because someone is desperate doesn't erase how they treated you when you were desperate too. I threw myself into work like my life depended on it, because it did. 3 jobs, tutoring math to struggling students, waiting tables at a campus restaurant, and freelancing as a virtual assistant for small businesses. Sleep became optional. Success became everything. Between classes and shifts, I started making cooking videos on my phone. Nothing fancy, just me in the tiny dorm kitchen showing how to make filling meals for under $5. Hungry Student Hacks, I called the series. It was therapy more than anything, proving to myself that I could create abundance from almost nothing. The money came slowly at first, then faster. $20 from tutoring, $50 from a weekend shift, and $100 from a particularly busy week of virtual assistant work. I deposited every check into my growing bank account and watched the numbers climb higher than Victor's grocery bills ever had. My professors noticed my dedication. "You're going places, Nadia," Dr. Williams told me after I aced another exam despite working until midnight the night before. He was right, but he didn't know how far I'd already come. Every dollar earned was proof I'd never be at Victor's mercy again. The video that changed everything was almost an accident. I was exhausted after finals, had exactly $5 to my name until my next paycheck, and decided to film myself making a feast from whatever I could buy at the campus store. Ramen noodles, an egg, some hot sauce, and a packet of frozen vegetables became a gourmet-looking meal. When life gives you $5, make it look like 50, I said to my phone camera, stirring the improvised creation. Something about my honesty, my genuine hunger, my refusal to be ashamed resonated with people. The video exploded overnight. 1 million views, then 2 million, then more than I could count. Brands started reaching out. Food companies wanted me to promote their products. Cooking equipment manufacturers offered sponsorship deals. My bank account, which had been slowly climbing with my 3 jobs, suddenly looked like telephone numbers. I stared at the offers flooding my email inbox and felt something I'd never experienced before. Power.
Real power. Not the kind that comes from making someone else go hungry, but the kind that comes from feeding yourself so well that others want to learn from you. Victor's Facebook message appeared on a Tuesday morning like a ghost from my past. "Hey, kiddo," it said, casual as if we talked every day. "Saw your videos online. Proud of you. Always knew you'd make it big. Hope you're doing well." I read it 3 times before the real message came through. "Things are tough here since I lost the job. Your mom's been working double shifts, but it's still not enough. Could you help with groceries? Just for a bit until I find something new?" The man who'd spent years reminding me I wasn't his real blood was now asking his fake daughter for real money. The irony was so thick I could taste it. I could picture him typing that message, swallowing his pride one bitter bite at a time. I stared at the screen for an hour, remembering birthday bones and locked refrigerators and plates of cold scraps. Part of me wanted to respond immediately, to unleash years of stored anger in perfectly crafted sentences. But revenge, I was learning, tasted better when it simmered slowly. When Mom called with the dinner invitation, her voice was carefully casual. "We're having a family gathering this weekend. Victor really wants you to come. He's different now. Humbler." She paused, and I could hear the hope threading through her words. "Maybe we could all start fresh." I almost said no out of habit. The last thing I wanted was to sit at Victor's table again, to feel small and hungry and powerless. But then I thought about the story, my story, about the beautiful, poetic justice of it all. This wasn't about going backward. This was about showing everyone how far forward I'd come. "Okay," I said, surprising both of us. "I'll be there." But I wasn't coming empty-handed, and I wasn't coming powerless. I started making calls as soon as I hung up. A catering truck, the works. Enough food to feed 20 people, even though there would only be 5 of us. If Victor wanted a family dinner, I'd give him one he'd never forget. But this time, I'd be the one deciding who ate first. I pulled up to my childhood home in a car Victor had never seen, a sleek sedan I'd bought with my sponsorship money. The catering truck was right behind me, logo gleaming in the afternoon sun. I could see faces pressed against the window, watching the strange parade arrive at their door. Victor's kids were there, looking older, but not much smarter. Liam had gained weight and lost hair. Sarah was taking selfies, probably hoping to capture some of my internet fame for her own social media. I didn't care. Let her use my success for her own small gains. I had enough for both of us. The caterers started unloading tray after tray. Roast beef, honey-glazed ham, fresh bread, 3 kinds of salad, roasted vegetables that actually looked appetizing, and desserts that would make a bakery jealous. Enough food to feed the neighborhood. All of it beautiful, all of it abundant. "This is all for us?" Victor asked, his voice cracking slightly. His eyes darted from the food to my face, trying to calculate what this all meant, what I expected in return. "No," I said sweetly. "It's all mine. I'm just sharing." I sat at the head of the table, Victor's old seat, and served myself first. Slowly, deliberately, thick slices of meat, generous portions of everything, while they watched and waited. The silence stretched like taffy, sweet and tense. Mom looked embarrassed by the role reversal, but I caught her stealing glances at the food like she hadn't eaten a proper meal in weeks. That's when my anger started to melt into something softer. She'd been hungry too, in her own way. Maybe not for food, but for peace, for a normal family, for a life where she didn't have to choose sides every meal. "This is incredible, Nadia," Sarah said, finally breaking the silence. She was recording everything, probably planning to post about her successful sister to her followers. I didn't care. Let her use my success for her own small gains. I had enough for both of us. Liam just ate quietly, faster than was polite, like he was afraid the food might disappear. And Victor? Victor kept looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time. The skinny, hungry kid he'd dismissed had become the woman feeding his family. Halfway through the meal, Victor cleared his throat like he was about to make a speech. The sound made my skin crawl. Same throat clearing he used to do before explaining why I didn't deserve seconds. "It wasn't perfect," he began, his voice careful and rehearsed. "But I did my best with what I had. Raising someone else's kid isn't easy, you know. I tried to teach you responsibility, work ethic." His kids nodded like trained puppets, supporting their father's revisionist history. My fork froze midway to my mouth. The audacity of it, turning years of cruelty into some kind of tough love parenting philosophy, made my vision go red around the edges. "Your best," I said quietly, "was feeding a child bones, while your children ate steak." The words fell into the silence like stones into still water, creating ripples of discomfort that spread across the table. Nobody spoke. Sarah stopped chewing. Liam put down his fork. Mom stared at her plate like she could disappear into it. And Victor? Victor kept looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time. The skinny, hungry kid he'd dismissed had become the woman feeding his family. Halfway through the meal, Victor cleared his throat like he was about to make a speech. The sound made my skin crawl. Same throat clearing he used to do before explaining why I didn't deserve seconds. "You can't just leave," Victor shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. "We're family. You can't just walk away from family." I turned back to face him. This man who taught me that family was conditional, that love came with a price tag, that some people deserved less because of whose blood ran through their veins. "Watch me," I said, echoing the words I'd been too small to say as a child. And for the first time in my life, walking away from that table, no one followed me, no one called me back, no one tried to make me stay. The cool air outside felt like freedom. Behind me, I could hear muffled voices through the windows, probably arguing about what had just happened, whose fault it was, what it all meant. I didn't care. I was done being their scapegoat, their cautionary tale, their excuse. My phone exploded after I posted about the dinner on social media. I didn't name names or give specific details, just shared the raw truth about growing up hungry in a house full of food. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of people commented with their own stories. Adults who'd been the difficult stepchild, kids who'd been treated like burdens, families torn apart by favoritism and cruelty. My inbox flooded with messages. "You're my hero. Thank you for speaking up. I lived this exact story." The video went viral beyond anything I'd posted before. News outlets picked it up, podcasts wanted interviews, publishers reached out for book deals. My story of survival and success became bigger than just my story. It became a rallying cry for everyone who'd ever been told they weren't enough. 3 weeks later, Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. She looked older, smaller, like she'd been shrinking since the dinner. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, and her hands shook as she stood in my doorway. "I should have done more," she whispered. "I should have protected you. I was so afraid of losing him, of being alone again, that I let him hurt you. I'm sorry, Nadia. I'm so sorry." Part of me wanted to slam the door. Part of me wanted to make her feel as small as I'd felt all those years ago. But looking at her, really looking at her, I saw another victim of Victor's system. A woman so desperate for stability that she'd sacrificed her daughter's well-being to keep a man who was never worth keeping. I didn't forgive her that day. Forgiveness would take time, therapy, and a lot of hard conversations. But I let her in. I made her tea, and for the first time in years, I cooked for my mother, really cooked, the way Mrs. Murphy had cooked for me, with love, with abundance, with the understanding that everyone deserves to be fed. Now I host dinners every week in my new house, a beautiful space with a kitchen bigger than Victor's entire living room, not for family, not for blood, but for chosen people. Kids from group homes who age out of the system with nowhere to go, college students working 3 jobs to pay tuition, anyone who knows what it feels like to go to bed hungry. At my table, no one eats last, no one gets scraps, no one has to earn their place or prove their worth. The only rule is kindness, and the only price of admission is showing up as you are. Victor still sends messages sometimes, birthday wishes, holiday greetings, awkward attempts to rebuild a relationship that was never really built in the first place. I don't respond anymore, not out of anger, but out of indifference. He's become irrelevant to my story.
My table seats 12 people comfortably, but we've squeezed in as many as 20 when needed. Every chair tells a story of resilience, of survival, of people who refuse to let others define their worth. And every meal is a reminder of something I learned the hard way. The best revenge isn't making others go hungry, it's making sure no one ever has to.
If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video, comment, and smash the subscribe button. Also, check out other videos on the channel. We've got more interesting stories for you.